You're watching VinylicPumaGaming. Hey guys, back with another video, and today I figured we could discuss and possibly explain some of Borderlands 2's most commonly recognized plot holes, or just some inconsistencies in Borderlands 2's story. Now, before we start, this isn't necessarily meant to be a criticism of Anthony Birch or anyone else that worked on the story for any of the Borderlands games. However, I would like to point out a couple of things that I've got to admit are at the very least a little strange. And what I also figured would be fun to do is to attempt to explain some of these inconsistencies between all of the games. After all, maybe there is an explanation for some of the plot holes that hasn't been revealed to us, or maybe the whole point is for us to speculate about what really happened. But I guess without further ado, let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room, and that's new use stations. Now, I think if we're going to talk about plot holes in the Borderlands games, it's essential that we discuss new use stations. Now, I know that the developers over at Gearbox have mentioned that new use stations aren't canon, and if you take that into consideration, it's easy to explain many of the plot holes or plot inconsistencies that surround the new use stations. As an example, if Handsome Jack is the CEO of a company that manufactures the new use stations, then why would he revive the player every time they die? To go along with this, there is this side quest in Borderlands 2 called Kill Yourself, which literally involves Handsome Jack asking the player to kill themselves for money, or alternatively, the player can call the Hyperion Suicide Prevention Hotline. If all of the side quests are part of the story and are canon, then this entire quest essentially confirms that new use stations are indeed canon. Otherwise, why would the player agree to kill themselves if they couldn't receive the reward afterwards? As I mentioned, new use stations can essentially undermine all of Borderlands 2's plot. For example, the death of Roland was meant to have emotional impact. However, if he can simply respawn, then why didn't he just do so shortly after Jack killed him? After all, Roland, Lilith, Brick, and Mordecai are able to respawn and use the new use stations in Borderlands 1, so why couldn't they feasibly use them in Borderlands 2? Of course, an explanation for that could simply be that in Borderlands 1, Roland, Lilith, Brick, and Mordecai were working for Hyperion in a certain sense. As is revealed in the plot at the end of Borderlands 1 and during the plot of Borderlands 2, Angel tricked the original Vault Hunters into opening the vault. Over time, the relationship between Hyperion and the original Vault Hunters had soured, and when Moxie, Lilith, and Roland botched their assassination attempt on Jack on Helios by blowing up the Eye of the Warrior in Borderlands the pre-sequel, Jack may have had whatever data collected on these Vault Hunters erased, so that when they died again, they died for real to never come back. At the same time, this doesn't explain Handsome Jack's death at the end of Borderlands 2. As the CEO of the company that manufactures a device that allows the player to revive throughout the game, why doesn't Hyperion simply revive Jack? You would think that the company has his biometric data on file, like they do for all of the new U participants. We even know that Professor Nakayama, both from Hammerlock's Big Game Hunt DLC and the pre-sequel, engaged in various projects to both please Jack and even find overboard ways to preserve him. As an example, in Tales from the Borderlands, Jack's personality is reconstructed as a part of an AI. Or in Borderlands 2, Nakayama was trying to create a clone of Handsome Jack, and as the player, you have to get rid of all of his DNA. But at the end of the day, Hyperion could have just revived Handsome Jack with the new you. My only guess as to why Jack wasn't directly revived was because of how people seemed to gain positions of power within Hyperion as a company. In the case of Handsome Jack, he became CEO as the result of killing Harold Tester at the very end of Borderlands the pre-sequel. If you are one of Jack's underlings and you are forced to suck up to him all day while he is simultaneously demeaning your character, wouldn't you secretly want him dead so you could finally step up and run things? As shown in some of the events of Tales from the Borderlands, Jack's AI is shown killing various Hyperion employees, so I suspect that there were many people that probably wanted to see Jack gone. So when the opportunity arose to revive Jack, perhaps they didn't want to deal with him anymore. Before we move on, one thing that I think is important to mention within the scope of the Borderlands universe is that Dahl also makes their very own version of the new use station called the Medvac. Now, you only see these on Elpis and Borderlands the pre-sequel. However, this could bring up another vector for reviving Roland or Jack. However, I suppose what is key here is that Dahl may or may not have Handsome Jack or Roland's biometric data to revive them. So even if Dahl has the technology, they still need the Vault Hunter's DNA. However, with this said, I think it's important to mention that Dahl should have the biometric data for Athena, Nisha, Wilhelm, Jack's body double, Aurelia, and Claptrap. So, at the very least, it seems like Dahl could somehow revive both Nisha and Wilhelm somehow if they really wanted to. And I guess while Wilhelm is mostly a machine, Nisha appears to be mostly intact when the player encounters her in Borderlands 2. So I suppose it wouldn't be too far of a stretch to see Nisha being revived somehow in some way. What would also be interesting to know is to what extent does Jack's doppelganger emulate Handsome Jack? While you kill a body double in Opportunity during the events of Borderlands 2, there is a possibility that Jack's doppelganger may still be alive during the events from Tales from the Borderlands. It's implied that Timmy underwent plastic surgery to make him look like Handsome Jack, while the Opportunity body double appears to have had some kind of device that makes him look like Jack. Perhaps Jack could be cloned from traces of his own DNA that would be found on Timmy the Doppelganger from Borderlands the pre-sequel. Alright, so with that out of the way, it's probably time that we discussed Bloodwing. Now, in the very first Borderlands, Bloodwing was a male bird. However, in Borderlands 2, Bloodwing is described by Mordecai as a she as opposed to a he. Now, this could ultimately be considered to be a retcon from Anthony Birch, or it was simply a mistake made on the part of Anthony himself. Now, to be perfectly honest with you guys, this is a pretty difficult thing to have an explanation for, as clearly Bloodwing was male and now Bloodwing is female. However, with this said, there is a phenomenon in the real world called sequential hermaphroditism, where an animal can change its sex. Protandry in particular is where a male organism can turn into a female organism and is a phenomenon that can occur with clownfish. Granted, a clownfish is a fish and Bloodwing is a bird. However, I think it's important to mention that the ability for an animal to change its sex can occur in nature. With this said, chickens are birds, and there are accounts of female chickens changing their sex in nature. However, as most chickens are female, they will become male, which would be protogeny. Again, in Bloodwing's case, he became female, which, after doing some research, is something not seen with birds from Earth. However, it's possible that Bloodwing may be a bird from another planet, where it can miraculously change its sex somehow. Either way, I do have to admit this situation is pretty bizarre, and it's also very uncommon. So it seems like Bloodwing would have retained its sex between games, but I guess it's worth mentioning that it could be possible. Finally, there's another issue that a lot of people seem to have with many of the events that occur once you've reached Sanctuary again after losing it. Essentially, the part of the story that occurs between wildlife preservation and the conclusion of where angels fear to tread. Now, there are a lot of issues that people have with this particular area, like why did we need to go to the Wildlife Exploitation Preserve to get a Claptrap upgrade when we could have just gotten a buzzard and flown over that massive death wall? Or why is Angel concerned with Lilith entering her chambers because she is a siren, where you can play as another siren, Maya, who is allowed to enter Angel's chambers? Or how does Roland simply just climb his way up to Control Core Angel when the player has to perform their assault from the front? Or in general, why did we need to go through certain steps that it seems like we should have been able to skip? So I'll go ahead and start with the first question, which is, why did we need the Claptrap upgrade if we could have just flown over the death wall? My theory would be that if you were going to assault an elevated fortress like Control Core Angel, you might want to send your ground troops in first. That way they can soften up some of the resistance that the buzzards would normally encounter. Since you're recruiting the slabs from 1,000 Cuts, I would imagine there are probably 1,000 to 2,000 slab bandits at most, and they may have about 50 to 100 buzzards at most. If you simply just flew over the death wall to fight Bunker, how many buzzards would you lose along the way? Perhaps by clearing out the area, the Vault Hunter is helping to preserve some of the buzzards for the battle with the Bunker. The second question is, why is Angel concerned with Lilith entering her chambers and not Maya? To be perfectly honest, I don't have a particularly great answer on this one. Both are sirens, and it seems like if Maya joined the assault, that Handsome Jack would have simply captured Maya and chose her to charge the vault key instead. However, there is the possibility that Maya doesn't use Iridium to charge her powers, when we do know that both Lilith and Angel have used Iridium to boost their powers. It may simply be easier for Jack to capture Lilith, as she is already used to absorbing Iridium, where Maya may take much longer to train. Then again, it could be as simple as holding a chunk of Iridium and suddenly Maya has charged up her powers. The third question is, how does Roland simply climb up the cliff on his way to Control Core Angel? Again, this is a difficult question to answer. However, I would say that it's possible that Hyperion is monitoring the surroundings of the bunker where Angel is stored. So maybe Roland had to wait until during the attack to actually scale the cliff, as that would be when he had the best chance of entering. Even if Roland managed to scale the cliff and successfully defeated Bunker, he would still need to be able to get into Control Core Angel by emulating Jack's voice and getting his biometrics to match Handsome Jack's. Now, to be fair, I do agree that there are certain things that are sort of silly about this entire scenario. After all, before the fight with the Bunker, why do we have to fight a bunch of turrets, let alone go up to the surface and actually fight the Bunker? Wouldn't it make sense to blow the door to Control Core Angel with some C4 or plastic explosives without even going to the surface to fight Bunker? And more importantly, while inside Control Core Angel, why are we still fighting Resistance? Wasn't this the point of fighting up to the Bunker to bypass all the Resistance? But I digress. Something I will say is that I would like Gearbox to explain some of these things themselves. While I suppose it's ultimately Gearbox's decision, it seems like there would be a way to explain why Roland or Handsome Jack weren't revived by new use stations. After all, Roland may simply not be in the database anymore, while Handsome Jack may have been the victim of some kind of internal corporate struggle and wasn't granted the right to revive himself. Overall, I'm pretty excited to see what happens for Borderlands 3. Hopefully, it will get revealed pretty soon. Alright guys, that's going to wrap up this particular video. If you like this video, please be sure to leave a like and let me know what you think about this particular video. Otherwise, like this video if you liked it, click the bell to join the notification squad, and as always, take care, and I'll see y'all next time.